Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for a dynamic effort lower day. But a quick reminder for those of you who watch these videos, please remember to click like down below, be greatly appreciated. And, a lot of people are going to ask, hey Jason, everything you're doing is low axial loading outside of your ME and DE work, and it's like, that is correct, guys. I'm going to have to work more on that. I want to make sure recovery is on point, and I'm going to use things like the reverse hyper to build my erectors up in my low back. So we did today really heavy band tension, obviously here, 130 pounds of bands, and we used the buffalo bar. Now, one of the things you guys will notice, again, my straight weight on the bar tends to be very, very light. Okay. I am actually running, again, like I've said, Winning's approach to speed work. As far as the percentages go, it makes sense. A lot of my clients have a lot of luck with it. Notice I'm getting those knees way back. We're getting out to a super wide stance. We're explosive, we're powerful in spite of the really heavy bands. And given a choice, even though I think chains are sexy and they look sexy, I'm going to tend to do, I think, more of my speed work with bands. It's going to be mostly bands. We'll rotate a lot of bars. I may work in some sumo. I'm still going to stick with conventional for now, but I mean, given how well the wide stance speed boxes are going, I could work in some sumo also, and that would let me kind of justify mostly sticking to bands. The same thing, I'm going to need to rotate bars a little bit, particularly if I'm going close grip for the benching. It might be necessary to do that. That's okay. I can do that. But yeah. It's kind of funny, all the pressing is going to be real close grip, but all the squatting is going to be super wide. I'm going to take everything out really wide. And as Louis Simmons always says, wide carries over to close, close doesn't carry over to wide, at least when it comes to squatting. So those were all super fast, really happy with that, really happy with my positioning. Speed pulls, same sort of idea. We're running 150 pounds of band tension with fairly lightweight. And what I may do with some of these is, since all this closed base rack is working really well, I may ramp up the band tensions, right? We may take the bands up real crazy at a certain point, on all of this, right? Because again, speed work, keeping in mind, people are like, does it only affect the lockout? No, because when your bands are set up usually correctly, there's tension at the bottom too, and it's just a very, very aggressive curve. And so again, the idea is going to be force production, compensatory acceleration. Some of it's going to give you some overspeed eccentrics against the heavy bands. And again, this teaches us to explode, gets our first reps in, teaches us to stay tight, learn positioning, all those things. I have a lot of videos explaining speed work. I have a lot of it. But we did 6 doubles on that. And like I said, I may work with some sumo also coming up for the dynamic work. And then after that, everything else is hypertrophy, and my upper back really is getting a lot of work. And these almost gave me forearm pumps, just doing some seal rows, but I decided I need to do at least a few sets of seal rows today. Even though technically, probably between my pull-ups and then the inverted rows I've been doing on the upper days, my back is probably getting sufficient work, but we'll hit a slightly different angle here. As long as I can recover from it, we're good. And you guys have seen me do a lot of volume on rowing and pulling in the past. But I just did 3 sets of 10 with a weight that was actually pretty hard for the third set. Because again, seal rows are so much more difficult than even stricter barbell rows like Pendlay type rows. Which I hate to use that term because really it's just called a barbell row. Everyone from Glenn Pendlay to the starting strength people try to point that out. That's just a barbell row when it's off the floor controlled. A bent over row is what other people are thinking of when they often use the term a barbell row. But I digress, back to the point. Again, just making sure my upper middle back is getting enough work, and rear delts, traps, all that stuff. Although, again, a lot of the traps and the rear delts are also getting hit on my upper day with all the shoulder work. So, the priority of it may not really be that high. My lats get a lot of work. They do get a lot of work. So it may come to a point where I focus more on upper or lower body volume a little bit on these days, a little more. Because again, my upper volume is high already, particularly because I do the pull-ups a lot of those mornings on top of it. After that, we did belt squats, and I realized I've been sandbagging on these, so I went heavier. I bumped it another 15 pounds. I got my 5 sets of 10 and realized, I need to keep just ramping this up. I need these to go up all the way coming up to Worlds, because this is going to be one of my biggest lower body mass builders, right? Particularly for my squatting muscles. Sled drag's contributing also. So I can't really half-ass it. I need to keep pushing that weight up. And I'm capable of doing so. So, I mean, realistically, I'd like to get at least another 45 on here. Right? I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable as a goal. Get at least another 45-pound plate on here. Probably need to go up next to just throwing another one of those 55s on, because I'm able to do these sets of 10. So I'm stronger on these, or I'm just getting stronger. Could be all the carbs, all the food, the sleep, everything else, any other supplemental stuff that might be helping. So, yeah, these are going to need to come up. So I think next time I do these, I'm going to try to put another 10 pounds on. But we need to keep bringing it up. But I went at 15, keeping in mind, though, those percentages might seem off if you were to look at purely the plate weight, because that whole bar and contraption weighs 55 pounds. But again, because of the angles involved, it's really hard to count it. We can't count it as real weight, although it does count to some extent. But the idea here is again, going wide, making sure we're hitting the adductors really hard in addition to the quads and glutes, going to the bottom of my real range of motion on it. Which pretty close to where we want to be on a squat, but keeping in mind, we do get that 15 degrees of carryover. But, that's going to be the main thing is learning to build that speed. So the speed strength, again, is going to help me explode out of the bottom of those squats more, all the speed boxes. But this stuff is where we're going to build a lot of the muscle that we need. All right, glute ham raises. After doing that speed work, these were harder. The first 3 sets were good. The 4th set, I was struggling. And I'm like, I better stop on the 5th set and let's just make up the volume on the reverse hyper. Because again, I did 5 sets of these the other day. Did them on Tuesday. 4 sets today. That's 9 sets of glute ham raises in a week. That's pretty good. That's still pretty good. Considering all this other stuff hits hamstrings also, that's a lot of hamstring volume. Still a lot. And I don't know how much I count reverse hypers towards hamstring volume. A lot of people do, but they're so much more glute and erector dominant. At least for me. At least for me, they are. That's really where I feel the work being done. And so we did our 4 sets of these and then went over to doing large amounts of reverse hypers. And I'm going to have to keep pushing up the reverse hyper, both the volume and the weight. And we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, my hamstrings were definitely lit after this. And it was funny, the other day I managed to get through the 5 sets a little bit better after the ME work. But it seems like the dynamic effort work takes a little bit more out of my hamstrings. And I don't know whether it's the speed squats or the speed pulls that are specifically doing that. But they definitely go into a little more fatigue. So I do notice it's a little harder to do glute ham raises, to really get them done all the way through. But like I said, we have a lot of hamstring volume in the week. So even if I only get 4 sets, considering all the other pulling we're doing, heavy pulling, speed pulling, the reverse hypers, other stuff. But I need these for both the deadlift and the squat. For the squatting, it's really going to be important to pushing those hips back. And that's what people forget. One of the big deals with hamstrings is not that they're a primary mover, is that the way that they stabilize you on a squat, they let you get your hips further back. They let you get into a better power squat position, particularly if you're a wider stance lifter. And that's a big deal of it. Plus, they give you something to bounce off of out of the bottom, right? Give you something to bounce off of out of the bottom. But on deadlifts, they are one of the primary movers. Glutes and hamstrings really are what move the weight, and then everything else is kind of an important stabilizer. But we're going to build some of those important stabilizers here. In the reverse hyper, I really have found that when I got really strong on this in the past, it carried over. I felt it carried over to my max deadlift really well. So I think we want to go back to that point, and I want to work back up to where, doing it pretty strictly, I'm using real real heavy weights. And the thing is, this is an exercise that we can get away with tons of volume on, just like those band press downs, because this exercise helps with traction in the back. It actually facilitates recovery. So it's one of those things that I can live on. You know, it's one of these movements that I may build up to where I do 10 sets, both lower workouts. I may build up to that and continue to try to get stronger at it while doing 10 sets, because this builds the low back. This builds the glutes. And we're doing the glutes at a very different angle from our squatting. All right, this gives us that other angle that we want, that we would get from even our pulling from the floor. And it's arguably one of the better glute exercises out there. But again, talk about low back recovery, low back development. This is very difficult to beat. There have been some studies, at least, that found that it's even better than a normal hyperextension. So again, I'm going to run with it. And I'm going to go back to kind of living on this machine. Right? I'm going to live on this machine, because I feel like back really limited me on squat. And I could say, well, it was upper back. But was it upper back? It might have been lower back fatiguing and letting me cave. And if the low back can stay strong enough to keep you up, then the upper back would be good too. But I'm doing all that upper back work also. We're doing a lot of that. So it's going to be work. But yeah, building my low back and keeping it recovered with the amount of training volumes that I'm doing right now. That's a big key to all of this. You know, you can get away with higher training volumes if everything is structured to facilitate recovery. So again, that's the name of the game. And I'm going to let you guys watch, you know, the last couple sets here. So I hope it has been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.